Hello, and thank you for watching this webinar on going to a conference. I hope within this webinar to take and share with you the resources to take and get you to fun conferences across the world where you'll have an opportunity to professionally share your mathematical or scientific knowledge. The webinar is going to take and discuss several topics, the timeline of which are presented here. So about 3 to 6 months prior, you should be thinking of applying to the conference and arranging travel for the conference. 1 month prior, you should be learning more about the conference location, packing for the conference, planning your conference experience, preparing your presentation, and just getting ready to go to the conference in general, with the goal of going to the conference, having fun, and having an engaging professional experience. So to get us started, let's first think about applying for the conference. The first thing you're going to need to do is find a conference that you want to go to. If we're looking at mathematics, there are several within the field of mathematics that you're going to want to consider. MathFest is hosted by the Mathematical Association of America and is going to happen often in the first week of August or the last week of July. The Society for the Advancements of Chicanos and Native American Scientists, or SACNAS, often is going to happen in October. The Field of Dreams Conference is not going to be an opportunity for undergraduates to present at, but it is an important mentorship opportunity, and that conference is going to happen in November. The Joint Mathematics Meeting is sponsored by the AMS and the Mathematical Association of America, along with other sponsoring organizations. The conference is often going to happen in the 2nd or 3rd week of January. And the Nebraska Conference for Undergraduate Women in Mathematics is going to often happen at the end of January. This is definitely not all of the national meetings that are available, but these are the ones that most often the students that I have worked with have attended. Sometimes instead of going all the way across the country, you're going to want to look a little bit closer at home. If you were in the Pacific Northwest, for example, you could think about going to the Northwest Undergraduate Mathematics Symposium, something that often happens in either October or November. The Pacific Inland Mathematics Undergraduate Conference, which often happens in the Spokane area in spring. The Pacific Northwest Mathematical Association of America Section Meeting, or PNW-MAA meeting, often is going to happen in April. And then CW Source, I threw in here as an example that oftentimes your own university is going to take and have presentation opportunities, conference opportunities for you to get together with others in your university and share the work that you have done. So all of these are options that you're looking for regional conferences where you can go and share your scientific discovery and learn from others within your region. People that you might want to collaborate with in the future. So once you've found that conference that you want to go to, the next thing you're going to do is send an abstract in. Abstracts are going to be short summaries of what you're presenting, discussing your research questions and the methods that you use to approach these research questions. Often these are going to be follow a very formatted format. So we're going to start off with a statement of the topic and research question, then talk about your methods and data analysis, your findings, and end with your conclusion. I also want to make a note, you'll see down here on the bottom of this slide, oftentimes you're going to want to take and make sure that your abstract takes and gives credit to whoever funded you to attend this particular conference, and make sure that you or funded you to do the research work. So for example, if you were to participate in the REU program that we sponsored over the summer, then the REU program was funded by a specific grant, and you would want to acknowledge that within your abstract and also within your presentation. From there, once you have learned that you have been accepted to the conference, you're going to want to take and apply for funding. There's going to be several different sources. The conference itself is going to be a great resource for funding. Oftentimes you're going to apply for that at the same time that you submit your abstract. But also keep in mind that many of the professional organizations for mathematics is going to be the AMS, MAA, SIAM, AWM have their own grants. And oftentimes on campus, especially for undergraduates, there's going to be scholarships from your department, your college, your university that are going to help you take and get to various conferences. For more ideas about this specifically, SACNAS put a video that is just the link to which is in the comments, the discussion. No, my apologies, the description of this video down below. So I encourage you, if you're looking for funding, to check out that discussion of resources. From there, we have been accepted to go to the conference. We have funding to go to the conference. What do we do next? Because we're getting ready to go somewhere else in the world. When you're actually getting ready to go to the conference, the next step is going to be arranging travel and other details for the conference. To make arrangements, one of the first things that you're going to want to do is get travel approval from your university. This is something that oftentimes you can work out with your major department. The advantage of doing this is it's going to give you some form of often travel insurance. Should anything happen, should a flight get delayed, should you get stuck somewhere, you're going to be able to have resources to help get you home. In addition, it lets you know how much you can spend on lodging, per diem. Per diem is a fancy way of them saying how much money you can spend on meals every day, per diem per day. And so this is going to tell you what sort of funding restrictions you might have on either the grant or from the university as you're attending the conference. Once you've gotten that travel approval, the next thing oftentimes you're going to pay for is the conference registration. This is the advantage of going through university. Sometimes if they are going to fund you to go to the conference, instead of you having to put that upfront cost, oftentimes the university will pay for that conference registration. In addition, you're going to want to set up a hotel reservation, get a flight and arrange travel. So for example, if you're going to one of those university, those regional meetings, you might want to be able to rent a university car. That's going to put the wear and tear on that university, that's resource, as opposed to doing it on your own resource. And if you are taking a flight, I'm going to encourage you to make plans on how you'll get to the airport. This is something that students in the past that I've worked with have forgotten to think about. So I'm just sharing this. The fastest way you can do that is first to see if you have other undergraduates that you know that are going to be traveling to the same conference, and see if you can have the same flight so that you can arrange travel together. And then together you'll need to decide if you're going to take and use a shuttle to get to the airport, or if you're going to drive to the airport and then park nearby. I personally really prefer the shuttle because then I don't have to be awake as we do the 2-hour drive from where I live in Ellensburg to the Seattle airport. And then I also don't have to worry about where my car is parked over the course of me being at the conference. So that's my personal preference. But it's important to make those plans ahead of time so you can make a reservation for a shuttle or know where you're going to park your car when you do get to the airport. So that gives us to the conference. Next thing you need to think about is learning about the conference location. So oftentimes for me that involves 3 different steps. First, I'm going to look up where the conference is. The advantage of this is that I'm going to find out details about the city and specific locations I'm going to be at the conference. It's going to allow me to check the weather. And also this is a good time to make sure that I've made the right airport reservation so that I don't accidentally fly into the wrong state. By me doing this check, I have learned that one time I accidentally made this mistake, and I've never actually ended up making that flight to the wrong direction because I was able to change the flight, get the details all worked out. So it's important that you're double checking those details as you go along. The next thing I do as I'm learning about the location is I map out the directions from the airport to the hotel or wherever I'm staying. This allows me to make that initial decision. Am I going to take a taxi from the airport? Am I going to take a shuttle from the airport? Am I going to walk from the airport? Am I going to use a bus? But making that decision about how I'm going to make the transport. If you look over here on the right, this is the travel from the San Antonio International Airport to the San Antonio Marriott River Center that people would be using for the SACNAS conference this year. And we learned that it would be about a 10-mile drive between the two. And so oftentimes that would be around a $20 to $30 taxi. And we also can see through the conference website that there are shuttle options available. So that would be a decision that I would want to be making as I'm preparing to get ready for the conference. Next thing I'm going to think about is mapping out the directions from the hotel to the conference. And I might actually do this before I make hotel reservations, because I'm thinking about also how am I going to get from the hotel to the conference center? Am I going to take a taxi? Am I going to walk? Is there a bus? If you see here on the right, again, this is San Antonio Marriott River Center is only 1 block away from the Gonzales Convention Center, where SACNAS conference will be held this year. So that's going to allow us to just walk between the two locations. It also means that I can use this moment to take and see what other resources are nearby to the hotel and nearby to the convention center. This is going to be especially important if you have specific dietary needs, if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegan, if you are gluten intolerant. Now is good opportunities to start looking for restaurants, food, grocery stores that will be able to take and serve those needs. So we've arranged for travel. We're getting to the conference. We've learned more about the conference location. We've made sure our hotel makes sense. Now it's time to start packing for the conference. These are the sorts of things that I often am thinking about as I pack for a conference. I always make sure that I'm carrying a bottle of water and a snack because as you can see from the previous slides, sometimes it's really close and sometimes it's more than a mile away. So I always try to just carry around those resources so I don't have to worry about missing an opportunity to talk with someone because I'm hungry. I also think about my clothing that I'm packing. I created a mathematical uniform, which is a set of professional math t-shirts as well as a set of professional clothes that I wear when I am presenting, so that I have the opportunity to always have a professional appearance throughout the whole entire conference. That said, oftentimes within that uniform, I'm always carrying a sweater. Even when it's 100 degrees in the location that you are going to, that does not mean that the convention center will be 100 degrees. So I'm thinking about layers. I have a t-shirt plus a sweater, or I have a short shirt plus a sweater. Just thinking about being able to constantly be comfortable in whichever location that I'm in. I make sure that I bring comfortable shoes when I go to conferences. I have seen, especially in the big locations, for example, the San Diego Convention Center, it is easy to end up walking 5 miles over the course of the day, just getting between different talks and lunch back to the convention center. So it's important to be prepared to walk and have comfortable shoes that will be able to support you in doing that work. Money is something that I recommend, just making sure that you have a little bit of cash should you go to locations, especially sort of lunches that don't have that don't take food. This is also a good check-in to remind yourself which meals will be covered by the conference and which ones you'll need to take and prepare for yourselves. For example, if you're going to SACNAS, part of your registration cost does cover those meals. Other conferences, there's, for example, the joint meetings, none of your meals would be covered over the course of that conference. Travel documents are going to be things that you want to make sure that you know where these are as you are getting ready to go to the airport. Documents might include your passport or your national ID. And it also is a good opportunity to print out details for the hotel and conference. So these are not things that you want to rely on being on just your phone or just your computer, because I've had opportunities where my phone battery has died while using it all day in the airport. And then I don't have access to that hotel information unless I've printed it out separately. So it's important to take and make sure that you have access to those details throughout your trip. This is also when you're going to pack anything that's location specific, whether that is a heavy coat for being in Baltimore in January or an umbrella for being in San Francisco in October. You're going to want to think through what are the location specific supplies that I want to bring. Maybe you want to bring a swimsuit so you can swim in the hotel pool. Maybe you want to bring out workout clothes, but what are the things that are specific to this conference location that you want to bring with you? So those are the things that you're going to want to take care of your own comfort. The things that you want to make sure you're thinking of to be able to have professional presentation while you're there is going to be your presentation materials. If you are doing a oral presentation, that means that you might want to bring your computer, some form of presentation backup. So this is something that is not up on the cloud, but instead is on a USB stick or on the computer itself. If you're presenting a poster, it's important to bring that poster with you. In addition, you're going to want to bring business cards or CV or just some form of way to have people contact you after the conference. If you are able to take and make a connection, which is the goal behind going to a conference, then you want to make sure that people can follow up with you after the conference. Things that once you are at the conference could also help make it a little bit better is you're going to want to make sure to hold on to receipts. These are things that different universities have different policies, but for our own university, it's important to bring those actual receipts back so that your reimbursement follows those receipts. So those are good things to just keep collecting throughout the whole entirety of the conference, and then bring back to whoever's going to help you process those expenses and have them ready for those individuals. Some other resource that one of our undergraduates shared that they felt like was really helpful was to make sure that you have a faculty phone number just in case. So this is asking a faculty member, even if they don't go to the conference with you, that you have their phone number, so just in case anything happens, that you are able to reach out to them and they can help you problem solve anything that might happen over the conference, whether that's you lose your poster or you get stuck in an airport. Making sure you have some sort of way to contact somebody back at your university that would be able to take and support you as you're going through that conference process. Okay, so you are now prepared. You've gotten to the conference, you know where you're going, you've packed for the conference. How do you make the most of your conference experience? As we were thinking about this and putting together the presentation, a quote that stuck out to us that came from SACNAS was from Dr. John Augusto, who commented that he has a chance to talk to many students while at SACNAS, and the students who successfully engage in the conference is the students that is prepared to be an active participant. And these are the students that he remembers. These are the people that stick out. So how do you do that? How are you prepared to be an active participant at the conference? What we recommend is that you think through these 4 things prior to going to the conference. First of all, what are your top priorities at the conference? What sort of things should you be thinking about here? First, getting noticed. If you were going to go all the way across the country, all the way across the world to go to a conference, your goal should be to meet and create meaningful relationships with 2 to 3 people. If this was not the goal of conferences, then we could do all conferences electronically via webinar. There is no reason for us to actually get on these planes and travel to these locations unless it is that opportunity for human-human contact. And so your top priority at a conference should be to take and create some sort of meaningful contact. As I think about this was very scary for me as an undergrad, but it's something that as I've continued to grow as a scientist has really started to make a difference. I've attended the last decade worth of Math Fest conferences, and from that, I've been able to take and create meaningful relationships with more than 2 to 3 people, and I've really gotten to see how they've grown professionally. They then think of me as they have different professional things happen that I could possibly help with them. And I've watched them, I've learned about how they've become different levels of professors or how they've changed and gone out and created different projects. And I've also gotten a chance to hear about how their families have changed as they've had children, as they have gotten married, as they have bought new houses. We've been able to take and share these things and grow with each other while meeting just once a year at these conferences. Things that are going to get you noticed is making sure that you are prepared to give your presentation in a professional manner. This means that you're going to practice your presentation, that you are going to show up on time, and you aren't going to just wait until the last minute to pull it all together. This means thinking about if there's a specific attendee that you really want to talk to. This might be somebody whose paper that you've read, or somebody that is running a graduate or REU program that you're really interested in. As you can see here, what we're doing is we're saying you aren't going into this conference blind, that you are taking some time to make sure your presentation is put together, but you're also taking some time to look over the conference program and thinking about how you're going to make the most of this conference, setting those priorities and being prepared to adjust to them. To help you support those priorities, you're going to want to make sure you look up 3 things before you go to the conference. First thing, please note this now. In fact, if you are watching a webinar and you are about ready to go to a conference, pause the webinar and go do this right now. The most important thing is to take and look up anything you are committed to be at and write it down. For me, that means I add it to my Google Calendar. For others of you, this might be a list that you take to the conference on a Post-it note, but make sure you have a list of everything you are committed to be at and that you've written it down and that you have prepared for the time zone shift for whatever that time is. So that means that sometimes I've had to give a presentation in DC at 8:30 in the morning, which from me being on the West Coast means that I'm giving that presentation at 5:30 in the morning, and I am still at the location, I am prepared, I am engaged, and I am ready to do that. So the thing that you should be looking at before you go to the conference is what you are committed to be at. I do this every year by downloading the abstracts, downloading the schedule, and searching for my last name. And from that, I can find the things that I have to be at. The next thing I do is search that same schedule for a specific speaker I want to see. So I'm going to take and look for a specific last name, or if I'm looking at different graduate programs, I'm going to search the whole entire program for those graduate programs, so that I'm going to go look at speakers from those programs and see if these are people that I want to work with. I'm going to see their talks and maybe go up and ask them questions afterwards, hear from them what they feel like makes a good graduate student at their program. But you're using this opportunity to make connections and scheduling it out ahead of time so that you can make sure that you're at those talks to make those connections. As long as you have that abstract book, that schedule book downloaded, it's a good time to take and search the receptions. So this is going to be when you're going to search the schedule of events for things like undergraduate reception or first-time attendee reception. Receptions are going to be places that you don't have formal mathematical discussion, but instead you have opportunities to take and get free food. Let's just be honest. It's where there's often free food for undergraduates or for first-time reception attendees, first-time conference attendees, to take and socialize and network with other people that are at the conference. So free food plus networking. It's kind of perfect. So other things to think about prior to the conference. We've already packed, I recognize that, but what are the things that you should be carrying around in your bag at the actual conference? First thing is your poster, or if you are doing an oral presentation, backups of your presentation. These are things that are downloaded that you are ready to present, and it's not that it's going to take you 5 minutes at the start of your presentation to get access to. Most especially be aware of, for example, at some of these locations that there is not good cell service because there's so many people at the location that they just literally can't provide the cell service. So instead, you're going to want to have some USB drive or some other way to take and access your presentation. In addition, you should be carrying some form of contact information for yourself, whether that's business cards or papers of your presentation, something with your contact information so that people can follow up with you afterwards. You should have money, some sort of, whether that's for an emergency or for souvenirs. I know a colleague that likes to take in every time they go to a conference, they mail themselves a postcard so they can keep track of all the fun places that they have been. And you know what I'm going to say? I mean, bottle of water and a snack is always going to be something that's going to be important to carry with you while you're at that conference. And that leads us to what are the 3 things you should plan to do at the conference. The first thing is you should do your presentation. You flew all the way across the country, even if that presentation is at 5:30 in the morning for you, you should still show up to it. Make sure you set the alarms and make sure that you are present so that you take and give your presentation and you're noticed for your science, as opposed to getting noticed because you didn't show up. In addition, you're going to want to take and get noticed. You should try to make a meaningful relationship with 2 to 3 people. Who've said it, I will say it again. Just you want to take and make sure that you're using this opportunity to do people-to-people contact. And finally, you're going to want to find some way to take and record your conference experience. Some people suggest a conference notebook, so just a notebook that you take to a conference, and every year you go to a new conference, you keep on recording in that notebook, sort of like a conference diary, I guess you might say. I have a friend that created an email alias, and just every time she goes to a conference, she emails after that conference to that email so that she has something that's searchable and electronic that keeps track of her conference notes and her conference contacts. Either way, for all of these things, it's some sort of way of recording their conference experience. I myself really like to take and tweet when I have important conference experiences. It gives me a chance to take and share my thoughts in that moment and be really active within that moment. I'll take a picture of the presenter and their slides, and then sort of summarize for me in those 280 characters what was important to me about the thought that they just shared. And for me, it's been a fun way to take and share that conference with people back home, as well as have a good way to take and record and memorialize the thoughts that I had while I was at the conference. So hopefully that takes and gives you a little bit more about thoughts about preparing your conference experience. So the next thing I'd like to think about is preparing your presentation. So oftentimes, as an undergraduate, you have 2 different types of presentations you might be doing at a conference. The most likely is going to be making a scientific poster, which has this format often as we see over here on the right, where we have up at the top an intro. Above that, we have a title, and then over on the right, conclusions. It's something that oftentimes you can sketch out really quickly, and possibly even use PowerPoint or LaTeX to take and set up in its final form. But it's going to have all the key information that most likely you've already presented in your undergraduate experience. You're going to have an introduction over on the left, conclusions on the right, and then you're going to use the middle space to fill up with methods and results. Doing this should be really, really visual. You're going to take and use the text to support the graphics. So let's give you some examples of that. Here is a poster put together by one of my undergraduates that I worked with that talks about the fluid dynamics and numerical analysis approach of cosmic dust particles. I want to give you this visual and then compare it to the original sketch that we had. If we go back and forth between these 2 posters, one of the biggest differences that you'll see is that we made the graphics much larger. On this poster, we actually made the universe all the way across the top, the solar system. And you can see over here, when we were talking about this interstellar medium on the left, it was so small, so tiny that we couldn't really see a lot of the details. So by taking and stretching and using the space, we were able to take and have a much better visual for to be referred to while Cassandra was presenting her poster. At the same time, if we look at the middle graphics, you can see that we have expanded them out and made them much larger, again giving her an opportunity to spend more time pointing at the different parts of the graph, because that's what a poster presentation is going to be. It's going to be you taking and standing in front of this poster and using your hand or a pointer, pointing out the different aspects of the research while you tell the story about how your research got developed. You're going to take and talk about the important variables. You're going to talk about the important results that you've made. You're going to talk about your individual contribution. And to do that, it's going to be important that the graphics, the visualizations are large enough to do it. Here's another example. This is the poster that I put together for my PhD results. Again, it has a lot of the same components. Up here on the top, we talk about a title, but it includes who the people are that did the work. For you, that might be your colleagues as well as your research advisor. It's going to include the objectives and the biology background. Over here, we have the results. If I was to take and remake this poster, I would make a lot of these visuals, especially the stuff in the middle for mathematical model, much larger, and I would just verbalize out loud things like the future goals. The other thing that hopefully you're seeing within all of these posters is some form of acknowledgement to the people that funded the poster and some form of set of references. So these are important components to include. So be visual. Use an active voice when writing text. Don't talk about what you used to do, but talk about actively what you did while doing the poster, the research behind the poster. And then edit ruthlessly. Make sure that there is not grammatical mistakes. Make sure that there is not spelling mistakes. Make sure that you have spelled your advisor's name right. Things like this. Just leave yourself enough time to actually be able to see the poster before you print it. One of the things I really like to do is try to take and edit these posters on a projector or some other form of TV so that you can see it large enough to really imagine what it's going to look like printed out. Oftentimes, if you go to a university classroom, you're going to be able to project in that manner, and that can really help you see where is the text way too small and where are places that you can make the images bigger or create that balance. So don't rely on just the size of your laptop. Think about other ways to take and edit this larger. Because doing that is really going to help you make sure you can see the poster content. The thing that I've seen, the biggest mistake I see students make over and over with posters and presentations is that the text is much, much, much too small. That gives us a good opportunity to talk about presentations, giving a scientific talk. Similar to your poster, for both of these, your goal is always to tell whoever your audience is an engaging story. You're going to start off with who you are, where you did the work, and what you're going to be presenting. You're going to talk about an outline for the talk, set up the background, build up where the problem came from that you're solving. What's the particular thing that you are hoping to take and do, whether that's the Ebola spread or saving the pika population. And then share what you have done and the end of the journey to contribute to the solution. I really liked this visual from Dr. Tullio Rossi that sort of talks about how you're engaging with the story as opposed to just providing a lot of facts. In order to do that, in order to tell the best story possible, it's going to be really important to practice. Practice so that you stay in time, practice so that you stay engaged, practice so that you're just really present and you're giving the best professional presentation you can, given that you just went all the way across the country to take and give that presentation. Good people to take and see that presentation and give you feedback are going to be faculty, colleagues. Make sure that people have listened to your presentation before you stand up to give it, and make sure that you are staying in time and doing that presentation. Because you want to go to the conference and have fun and be able to put your best foot forward. So I end my discussion by making sure to take and reinforce for you that you're going to this conference to have an amazing professional experience, but it's also going to be a wonderful time to take and balance out professional goals and personal time at the conference. You do not need to spend 12 hours a day at the conference. You can take a step away and go enjoy things like pizza treats. This is deep dish pizza I had in Chicago, or good time with friends. As I said, your goal is to take and network and make connections. I like to take and go out to dinner whenever I go to a conference with my grad school roommates. We always go out and try to make sure that we have one dinner so that we can really connect and catch up whenever we go to a conference. Also think about stepping away and going and seeing fun adventures. So if you're gonna go to these fun places, take a minute to appreciate not just the conference scientific approach, but also anything that is fun and unique about the city you were visiting. It is okay to take and do that, but I am encouraging you to balance. A lot of your time should be at the conference, should be at making those connections. You can spend a little bit of the time going out and having a good time. So hopefully you're going to go to the conference and have a wonderful time. I end with also reminding you, if you run into any problems, call a faculty member. We have been to conferences before. We have had disasters before. We are ready to help you problem solve through these things, because our main goal is to make sure that you take and have fun and have an amazing professional and wonderful experience. So with that, thank you very much, and I hope you have a great conference.